Welcome back, everyone, to Fit for Fatherhood. Today, we'll be talking a little bit about something that every father in every generation deals with, and that's how parenting has changed over time. Every generation seems to think that they're doing it better than the one before them, but at the same time, every generation complains that kids today are being raised wrong. So today, we're asking a very simple question: Are modern fathers raising kids better than previous generations, or are we just parenting differently? And we'll go ahead and get started here. I'll ask you, Leo, and also Ed, when you guys think about father figures growing up, what is something that resonates with you that your fathers or father figures did very well?
All right, so I mean, I guess we got to talk a little bit about how the fathers were in our upbringing, right? Like my dad's dad died when my dad was like 9 years old of diabetes. Actually, I just learned that it was from diabetes a couple of weeks ago when I was in Panama from some of my dad's cousins. So my dad didn't grow up with a dad. My dad had many dads, if you will. My grandmother married a couple different times, so he never really had his dad, and his two other siblings from the same dad were his sisters, so he was the only sort of boy. And so, in a lot of ways, he didn't know how to be a dad when it was his turn, although he always wanted to. And then in our situation, as we talked last time, my dad came to the U.S. seeking a better life, and he was a truck driver. For over 30 years, he drove semis across state lines, all of the United States, continental United States. So that meant that he was not home all the time. So my dad was like almost a father over the phone. Whenever we would get in trouble or did something wrong, like we would have to talk to my dad on the phone, which is really interesting. But what that came with is, my dad was unfortunately not able to make it for I think all of our births. He wasn't able to make any of our births. And my dad was not able to be there for a lot of graduation ceremonies. He would always sort of barely be making it for some, and so he missed out on a lot of those kind of first times. And I think, unlike today, there was no such thing as, for my dad at least, like PTO or parental leave. Those things don't exist. I had to explain to my dad that I was actually working when I'm working from home. Like that concept of working at home is like wild to someone like my dad. And so, as much as my dad for sure did better than what he had and did the best that he could, it is drastically different from what I am able to do as a dad for my kids. Like, I just got back from 3 days at a fifth to sixth grade transitional camp with my son and all of his fifth grade class, boys and
That's cool.
girls. So, one of the dads in the cabins. And not only was I able to take time off of work to do that without really any issues, but I also got to see at how these kids, it's a Christian school, right? Private school we talked about. It's a Christian camp too. And man, like the love and the support that they have from their peers and others, it just did not exist for me. It was not like this. Like I had my community of people like, you guys growing up, and we kind of helped each other make it through, but I didn't have a lot of adults that were necessarily always looking after me and trying to make sure that I navigated in the right direction growing up. So that's kind of how my upbringing came. We also moved a lot, so it's really hard to establish people in the community when you're always moving around. What do you think, Leo?
Yeah, man. I
Very
mean,
quickly, Ed. Yeah, before we transition, really quick, I had a question for you, Ed. What generation was your dad? Was he a Gen X? Was he a boomer? Do you know?
My dad was born in '59.
Okay, 59.
So what does that
So I
make?
think that would make
yeah, I think he's
a
a boomer.
boomer. Yeah, he's a
So I think
boomer.
64 is a cutoff. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay. And so then that's something that's said that in with the parenting style that you saw your dad, did you see him parent like other dads at that time from those times? Was it very similar? Boomers are said that they're pretty tough, disciplinary. Is that your experience?
100%. Very disciplinary. Like it was worse when we were younger. I think as we got older, times started to change a little bit. But like we used to get whooped, like for sure, if we did something bad. And like honestly, sometimes I was doing bad stuff, like But other times it was like, yo, like and like one time they sent people to my house from school in elementary school, and I've had other times where like I was just running around on my bike and some homies and stealing stuff from someone's garden, and we got in trouble. But very disciplinary for sure, and it was pretty strict. No tattoos were allowed in my house. No piercings were allowed in my house. No guns, no toy guns were allowed for us. Partly because the U.S. invaded Panama, my dad was there, or they invaded my dad's neighborhood. Clothing was very strict, like no baggy clothing, specific haircuts. They didn't have the internet back then, so when we would dial up in, for those who know what that experience is like, they didn't really know what to do or how to monitor, but TV was pretty controlled, what we consumed. But yeah, was that like for you too, Jose?
Yeah, very similar. My dad's actually Gen X, but for the first 10, 11 years of my life, also grew up, we lived with my grandpa, and my grandpa, he was a boomer. And just thinking about my grandpa was very old school, very disciplinary. Even with me, he never hit me or anything like that, but he would give me some some good scoldings when I was a kid. But I would see my aunt, she was the same age as me, and definitely that was her kids. I did see that disciplinary. I guess it was physical, right? But not, I guess not abusive, but just physical, because that's how they grew up. And they were, and that just that generation seems to be a little bit more disciplinary and like Gen X. Like my dad was also very strict, very, very strict, but he he was a little less, like he didn't follow. Oh, and it's just from my dad's experience. He he would tell us how his mom, his parents were very strict, right? Very disciplinary, and they would give, what when they were kids. That was a parenting style back then. Uh, like he never hit us, but he was very, very strict. Same thing, like what you mentioned, Ed, where how he dressed. Tattoos. I got a tattoo when I was 16 years old. I hid it from my parents for like a year, and I remember when my dad found out. Oh yeah, he was furious. Still very traditional in that sense, but he was starting to become a little bit more modern than the boomers. Yeah, luckily I did have two father figures. And looking back now, like how my grandpa was, I actually appreciate how he was, because I don't know how much worse I would have been had he not been as strict. As he would take me out. I would like to wear baggy clothes, and the first time he saw me wear baggy pants and it came to his house sagging, he said, "Nope, that's not accepted here. Get out." And my grandma just trying to chase me, "No, no, come back, please." And my grandpa said no, and if I just got kicked out from his house. I think I was like 13 years old. Like the first time he kicked me out of the house when I came over to visit. But yeah, so just very, very old school. So different, a little different.
Man. So I would say now I say that I was blessed to not just have one father figure, right? I grew up without my dad, but my mom did marry a couple times. But I honestly wouldn't even call any of them father figures because they weren't like really good role models per se, right, from my memory. But I did have a lot of friends and friends' parents and girlfriends' parents at the time when I was younger that the dads were just really good. And then my Nino, man, my Nino, he's such an amazing just male role model for me. He's the one I think we spoke about it in the previous episode where he's the one that has three daughters that they all went to UCs, all graduated within 4 years, all working their careers, and they all moved out at 18 and never came back, but still have a really good relationship with their parents. So he was a really good role model for me, especially growing up. And he actually lived down the street from Cajon. They live right behind Steady Brothers on Kendall. If anybody's familiar with, um, yeah, he was one of my main role models. But I had different guys, and what I would do is because I didn't really have definitely not a steady male father figure, right? But I would look at other males and I would see what they're good at, right? I would say, okay, this guy, great provider, but he lacks at this. Or I hear from my friend or from my girlfriend at the time that he does this X and that. Okay, cool. So I know he's really good at this. So let me just grab that as a role model and then throw out everything else. And then this other person would be really good at, he's a great husband, right? He did kind of like the biblical way of what a husband should be. And I was like, okay, cool. Let me grab that role model or that example, and then throw out everything else that I feel like wasn't up to par with what was good. So I got to like choose, and I listened. I think that the biggest thing was I love to conversate with older people, man. Like if I see somebody at the bar and they're older, that's the first thing they want to do, right? They want to talk and about their experiences, and to me, those are all so many lessons from when they talk. Obviously, depending on where their path comes from, right? But a lot of times you do get to meet a lot of good people just by conversating. But yeah, I think my mom stepped up a lot when you guys talk about disciplinary. Man, my mom was definitely super disciplinary, man. I remember I used to get whooped too. You know, just I would for sometimes things that I wasn't doing right, and then sometimes for stuff that I was like, what the heck? Why would she spank me for that? I remember I was like 8 or 9 years old. No, sorry, before we came to Mexico, before we came to the United States, so I was 7, and it was like a little cul-de-sac, and cars would come into the neighborhood, and we were just playing outside, and we would grab onto the trunk and follow the car as it was driving into the cul-de-sac. My God, bro, I got one of the biggest spankings I've ever had at 8 years old, 7 or 8 years old. And that was a tough one. And then when we came over here, it was tough. I mean, similar, to, maybe not as much as Ed, but we moved a lot from the time I was like 8. Because when we first got here, we ended up in Rosemead. Then we went to Rialto, and then we moved 3 times in Rialto. Then we ended up in Colton, then San Bernardino. But it was like downtown San Bernardino by the train tracks on Second Street. Then well, I went to Lido Creek Elementary, which is like right there in downtown, and then I ended up going to um, and then from there I went to Musclay. So we probably moved about 7 or 8 times from the time I was 8 to 12, 13 years old when I was in middle school. So like that stability of having childhood friends, I think I started that in probably high school because that was when I was able to solidify friendship because I would have friends in elementary, in Rialto, and then I would have to move, and then the stability of having childhood friends wasn't a thing, and I talk to my wife all the time. She went to a private school from kindergarten to 8th grade, right? And then now, like in the same neighborhood, she has a friend that um they grew up in the same private school. So they're like, oh yeah, I remember when Miss So and So used to do this, and I was like, man, that's cool. That's so cool. I want in the part I want my kids to have that, but then I also see how it helped me not. It sounds bad, but like those attachments weren't so big because I feel like when you're young, emotions are so huge. When you are attached to something that is like that, uh, um, I don't know. I feel like there's pros and cons, right? I don't want to say like one's better than the other because I don't know, but I do feel like sometimes not having that attachment when you're that young did help me let go of like not getting involved in games 'cause I was like, well, I don't need friends like that. I don't feel like I don't, like I need because it was so easy, especially because we lived in Musqueam. There was gangs around, so joining one wasn't hard. But I just remember like, well, I don't need friends. I don't need to feel like I need to belong somewhere. I just want to hang out. Um, and it was an upbringing as far as no fatherhood. I didn't feel like I needed that male role model from one person. I was able to just dictate which ones I wanted at the time.
Yeah, and having that option there, because I think for a lot of us with our dads, it's like that's our role model, and good or bad, that we pretty much follow what they do, and we tend to become our parents. I used to always say, well, I'm not gonna be like my dad, um, and exactly like my dad right now. But just they become our sole role model. But for you, you had options of just seeing the good and bad of different people. But what's like that one thing that you'd say stood out to you the most that you said, okay, this is a great dad because he does this. Anything that
Which
stands out that you still remember?
two of them that stand out for me. Again, my Nino. He's one of those guys that he was there for all three of his girls. One thing he always told me, man, he's like, don't lie, right? I don't care if it's Santa Claus. I don't care if it's Easter. If they ask you, I mean, obviously know how to politically say it correctly when they're too young for you to say, no, there's no Santa Claus. You're wasting your time. But they politically say it right when they're younger. But then when they're older and they ask you, just be like, well, I buy your presents. And I feel like that brought him down to earth earlier than I guess the culture norm. So that's one of the examples right from him. And one of his big thing was never lie to the kids, regardless of how innocent it seems. And the other one was a good friend of mine, my girlfriend from high school's dad. His name was Armando. Super cool guy, man. Hardworking, very hands on. Did whatever the kids needed for fun, like in the backyard. Like he was an electrician, but he would work all day, come home, and then the pool in his backyard, he built it by hand, bro. He shoveled it, him and his son, shoveled the hole. It was like a little cocktail pool, small cocktail pool, but they made it, right? And I was like, dude, that's super cool. He had a pet pig for his kids. And I was like, see, he was just make sure that the kids had fun. So those are the two things that I was like, man, that's so dope, man. That's something that I definitely gravitated to and hang on to that I'm kind of regurgitating with my kids as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, and if you really think about it, because I think all of us talked about in some form how different parents discipline the kids differently. I think you and Ed did did see that where it was a different form of parenting, right? Where before we would, and I you don't you see that it's a little different now because before you would not say no to your parents. Like your parents, especially as a kid, you would not talk back to them. It was where the parents said what you had to do something and you did it, right? There was no arguing now. And now we try to reason with our kids. I don't know if you also try to reason with your kids or what the rules are. How do you compare to that form of parenting from before to now? Do you try to reason with your kids? I know that's pretty common and popular now.
I feel like back in the day, rebelling was like for real. Like you were really rebelling. Like you're gonna get your ass whooped and you're probably gonna get kicked out, like rebelling. Now it's like you're gonna get your iPad taken away or something like that, you know? And so like this is definitely, when I'm listening to you guys and I'm thinking, I'm like, dang, things are kind of soft these days. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
I think there is some of that. And like even though my parents were strict, like I do appreciate uh a lot of that firmness and the rules, structure, consequences. Because the reality is that when you get to the real world as an adult, like that's how it is, yo. It's dog eat dog out here. Like
Hmm.
you speed, you are gonna get a ticket. You speed more than once, like it's gonna get worse. Like, that's the reality of how it is. And so with our kids and our family, I like to think it's not a democracy. This is a dictatorship. Like my wife and I definitely are in charge, and we may listen to your cause, but like it's still whatever we said, and that's what we're gonna do. My wife's definitely more strict than I, and I gotta tell you guys, like, put a bunch of fifth graders together. I was like, dang, my kid's actually pretty well behaved. Like, I didn't realize how well behaved my kid is. But you do start to see like what happens if you're too loose and there are no consequences. Like they would just take and take and take more. So there's something to be said there. And like we do have, we try to be firm. And honestly, as the kids grow up, we try to identify the preferred item or the preferred thing because that becomes the worst case scenario, right? And so sometimes we've had it where like the iPad and the screen time, like it doesn't do anything because they're like, whatever, I'm over it. And so it's like we have to navigate that and see like, well, what is the worst case scenario? And I do feel like we have been able to create a system where they are getting it, and we see that with the results of taking those things away. And like for example, my son, he knows that if he gets sent home from school, it is the worst thing that could have ever happened. And so, him being on the spectrum, sometimes he can't regulate, and sometimes he'll escalate, and then he'll start to, say mean things or act in the wrong way. And we have had to encourage his teacher and his aide that if he is repeatedly not able to control his body or whatever, to please send him home. And so he knows, and I'm usually the one that goes to pick him up because I work close to his school. And I'll go pick him up, and like he's just bawling his eyes out, and he's apologizing, and he knows like he's in trouble. And like the last time that happened, I remember like, man, I would have gotten my ass whooped in the car, and when we got home, and like our system here, it's like, okay, to us, it's like if you are not able to hold your composure and follow direction in the classroom, then that means that you don't want to go to school. If you don't want to go to school, then you're going to have to do something labor. You're going to have to be a laborer. And so what he has to do is like my favorite activity is picking up poop outside in the rain. The rain's a lot here. And like cleaning toilets, like just chores on chores on chores that cleaning like we try to find the worst chores. And he'll go and he'll do them. He'll do them. The last time this happened, he was like, I know how to do chores, and he had to go to came straight to my wife and was like, I'm sorry, like what chores do I have to do? And like it was actually really rewarding for us to see that this system works, and we didn't have to hit them. We didn't have to. Obviously all the other iPad and TV time went out the window, but there are other ways to do it. And then talking through what happened, and like we've had that happen a handful of times less, maybe three or four, and we go months without having any issues after that because it's cemented in him that there was a real consequence to what he did. So, I mean, yeah, I think it's kind of being soft compared to what happened to me, but at the same time, like there's other ways to have get the same results without inflicting the same pain up front.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm actually in similar in a way where I've never had to hit any of my kids, but I have been different types of parents with my oldest compared to my youngest now. I feel like I'm more of a millennial parent now, and I was more of a Gen X boomer parent with my older kid. My oldest son, he could not sigh. If he sighed, we'd take away the iPad for a whole month. Like he would like if he sighed or if he said if he said no to anything, it was like you similar where it was the worst punishment for him. He was very much into he's been into video games his whole life. Take away his video games for the whole month or the whole summer. I think one time I took away everything because he started his mom asked him to do something and he kind of like shrugged his shoulders or something like that. And then like 3 months, no electronics, no. So I was very very strict with them. I remember that, and still to this day he he's pretty obedient. Like he knows that if I ask for something, it's like now. And I guess I instilled that his whole life. And so I was very, very strict with him. And now that I have my younger kids, I always tell them, your brother would never do that. He would have been grounded for a month. And you guys are over here crying and I allow it. Unfortunately, I'm a lot more lenient. And you can see that the more lenient you are, then the less consequences, and the more they push, the more they know that they can and get away with. But different types of parents. But I think it's tough figuring out, okay, which one's like the perfect combo. And like, yeah, you're seeing the results, right, from the what you're implementing. So you're seeing that your kids are pretty good compared to other kids because of what you're doing at home. So yeah, I think that's a tough part because I see how it was with my oldest, and I think there's times, especially with my 2-year-old, where I think, man, I want to go from millennial parenting to boom parenting with her because she's a handful. And I would never hit my kids, but there's times where I tell my wife, "What do we do? For her to listen. Do we have to hit her? Like, what do we do?" But we would never do that. Just my parents never did, so it just I couldn't. I don't know. I just wouldn't be able to. But yeah, there's times where I think, okay, we need to maybe bring back some of that boomer parenting for some of these kids, and then we do I do engage with a lot of kids, and I do see where there needs to be structure, there needs to be some type of discipline because without structure or discipline, then kids can they'll just run amok. They'll get away with what they know they can get away with. Yeah, toddlers, right? You got
Yeah, and
4 year
honestly,
olds.
my oldest are 4 years old, so I'm listening right now, and like I'm gonna have to revisit this episode probably in a year or two. Similar to you, Ed, my wife is the most strict. I feel because she's here with them most of the time. She deals with them, and I know they can be a head case, dealing with them all day. Yeah, she's a more strict, but I do notice that like my presence does cause an authoritative decision, right? Like if they're talking back to my mom or no, my mom, their mom, or they're talking back to or just not listening, if I raise my voice and say, "What the heck are you doing? Go do, do what your mom's asking you to do." It usually clicks, right? And I guess that's cool in a sense. I mean, and you guys are awesome because there has been times obviously not to where they feel pain, because they even tell me, well, that didn't hurt. But I have spanked my 4-year-olds, man. There's times where, like, I'm like, hey, what the heck? Why'd you do that? Why'd you hit your brother? You know, like, brother's 6 months old, and they're over here swinging like a plastic bat at him. Like, dude, what are you doing? So I have spanked them before, and obviously they laugh at it, but to let them know, like, hey, there's a consequence to an action that you're not thinking of, or to let them hopefully realize for the next time, before I do this, even though I don't know that it could cause harm, I know there's a consequence to it. So you hopefully they think twice, right? That's my mentality. Maybe that's the boomer side of me, or how I was brought up, where a spanking might make me think of the spanking more than the actual cause and effect of what I'm doing. But yeah, so yeah, I watch my 4-year-olds sometimes. I don't think the two, they don't catch on to cause and effect yet, right? So sometimes I gotta we gotta step in and show them, like, damn it, this is the way to do it. But as far as the leniency, yeah, I think screen time is one of them that I feel like we do, right? Especially because we have multiples at such a young age. Just to even cook dinner, or to pick up all the crap from the living room, putting on a show for an hour helps us, right? Because two or three of them are engaged, and that means my wife and I only got to deal with one or two, and that is a huge help to get some stuff picked up around the house. So we definitely done that with screen time, and that does become a threat, especially when they're not listening. It's in the morning. Hey, we got to get ready by X amount of time, and they're sitting there like doing nothing. Boom, turn off TV. Come on, what's going on? Let's do it. But besides, like, the future sense of things, I'm gonna have to come back and revisit this episode and listen to you guys, because yeah, I haven't got through. None of my kids are even 5 yet, so even school is not a it's not a thing. They did go to a like a homeschooling thing where they go to the classroom 1 day a week, but they had the homeschool thing, and then they had a math class, the twins. Obviously, I had one that was an overachiever. She loves math. She does addition and subtraction already at 4, which is probably normal, but she's really good. She loves it. Like, she likes, like, remembering math. Like, she doesn't even like do the whole fingers anymore. So she got into it. She's really into it. And my other one, who's more artistic, she likes to draw and paint and stuff. Sometimes she would go into class, sometimes she wouldn't, and my wife had to deal with a lot of that. I feel like eventually, like, I talked to them, right? And that's the thing that I think we talked that our parents didn't really do, was I talk to them and tell them, hey, eventually you're gonna have to go to class, and if you don't, there is gonna be consequences. You know, so those are the things. Like, okay, when it comes to that, like, what is gonna be the consequences? Is it gonna be the iPad? Is it gonna be screen time? Is it, I don't know what the consequences are gonna be when school is mandatory. But I just wait for you guys to tell me that part.
Yeah, because I think that's the tough part, because when you know what they like and you can take it away from them, then it's easy, right? That's like their worst fear. But as soon as that they no longer care for that, then how do you I guess discipline or punish them, or create that fear for them where they're gonna lose their iPad if they do something bad. That's why my son, he was pretty good. He knew that, and he didn't do anything. If he did something wrong, that we take away his Xbox, and he wouldn't be able to play for a while. So then he would get straight A's, and was always on top of it. But it just and that's something else that comes to mind right now. Just the whole thing with screen time. I know there's like a lot of different people have different opinions on this, and what's the inappropriate age for kids to get to have screen time. I know you're in tech, and so what's your take on it, and how do you approach it with your kids?
Yeah, it's a tough one because I am in tech and I have a lot of tech in the house. And so, like, the thing is, like, I like it. And so that's the problem. And so, but I take myself as an example. It's like I can, binge watch some stuff, or I can get basically addicted to certain things. And I think that's where it starts to get really scary. Is like if you're having, if your results of not watching something is like you're mad or you get an attitude, it's like, whoa, that's really a problem. And so when we see that, especially with our son, like, we know, like, well, you were fine all day. We gave you 30 minutes or an hour of iPad, and now you're really being mean. Like, does that mean that every time we give you this, you're going to be like that, then maybe we're not going to do it for the whole week. And then he's like, dang, like he knows he messed up. And so then he can't wait until Friday, Saturday comes so he see if he earned it back. But almost always, like those weeks, like he does good because he knows he's trying to get that preferred thing. But I think for us, like we, especially now that we grew up with the internet, man, we got to be vigilant and really all over their devices. Like, make
Yeah,
sure you know what they're watching. You have controls to what they can access. Don't let them be talking to people or like playing with other people. Cause man, I'm just like, I just don't really trust anybody. That's kind of what we do. But also, like, from a very young age, you can control what they watch in the first place. So I'm like, man, I grew up watching like Land Before Time. Like, ain't nothing wrong with Land Before Time. Like, let's watch that. They don't know no different. They don't know about the new stuff. Like, just have them watch the old stuff, and then we
that's what
put it
I
in
do.
Spanish. You know what I mean? Like, and so there's that too, because some of the new stuff is like too flashy, too colorful, too much going on. And also, like, man, I'm a huge fan of like National Geographic, Nat Geo, animals, Animal Planet, Blue Planet, Planet Earth, all that kind of stuff. And so like we'll all get stuck on that. And that's totally fine in my book. I want them to want to watch that kind of stuff because it's to me it's an education on the end. And so when those things become the norm of what we're watching TV, like I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I have had my son like he likes Mr. DeMeo. At first, I don't know, check him out on YouTube. At first I wasn't sure about this dude. I'm like, I don't know, some adult dude making videos for kids, but he's a teacher. That's like how the YouTube is set up. And it was pretty educational. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm going to use this now as a tool. If it's something that he really wants to do and it's something that I approve of, like now it's going to fall into the long chain of things that I can potentially take away if I need to help discipline my child. So like you gotta like things like that. He loves to ride his bicycle, right? I would hate to take that away, but like, hey, if I have to, I will do that before, do anything else. But like Leo, you have a good point. Like I think I also am an authoritative figure in the house when I show up. If I'm on a business trip and I come back, I might catch my son like whining or talking back to my wife, and I would be like, "Hey, don't talk to my wife like that." And it just comes different when it's like it's not your mom, like this is my wife you're talking to like that, like excuse me. And it's also fun. I tried this one this week with the boys. I had 11 boys, fifth graders in my cabin. We had more kids than anybody else. And I was like, all you guys, get off your benches, get on the floor, get off your bunk beds, get on the floor, and give me push-ups. And I just set all these boys to do push-ups because I didn't know what else to do with them, man. Like they were wilding out, and it was really cool. I think that is a very much like Gen X kind of thing that you would think about, but it was actually very positive. Like we're doing exercise.
Yeah.
Like we're letting our energy out. And like as much as I hated it, like well, you very much understand why you had to do this right now. And so if you don't want to do more, like then stop acting out. And so stuff like that works in the house in the home too. Every kid's different too, Like my daughter Marissa, we got them both watches, and man, she is a techie. She's all up in her watch. She knows how to do all this stuff. She'll be adding people and their moms. So she can hit them up so they can have a play day. And I'm like, oh, you better relax. And so just the other day, I was showing her. I was like, look, so I'm an Android heavy guy. My wife is an Apple person. So I was like, look, I was trying to explain to her because her other friend had a Samsung watch. And I was trying to explain to her about the dark side and the bright side, You want to be on the Android side, blah, blah, blah. But I was showing her, like, look, with mom's phone, I can control everything on your watch. I can basically turn it off. I can see where you're at all the time. I can limit your apps. I can turn your apps off. And the look on her face was like, oh my gosh, Daddy, please don't take that down. Please don't kill that app. And I was like, yeah, if you misbehave, like I have the power through your mom's phone to turn off everything on your watch. And so it's like the new thing now. It's a privilege for her to be able to do these things. And in a lot of ways, I encourage it because, again, I'm a techie and I want her to be aware and be willing and able to use technology to advantage. But if it becomes a problem or if we need discipline, like those are the kind of things that in today's day, tools that we utilize to discipline. But there's always a communication aspect to these things, in my opinion. Like me showing her that, I had to explain to her,
Hmm.
and she's pretty well behaved, so we don't have to like really discipline much with her. But there's always a conversation piece, and I think that is a part that is very different from like my dad to me. Like my dad would have the conversation after he whooped my ass and I was recovering, and he would come and apologize, and then he would be sorry, then he would talk, and like yeah, we would be cool, but it was like, well, did we have to do all that, or could we just have done this in the first place? You know what I mean? And so I think for our generation, we try to front load that as much as possible. And like, yeah, the presence does help. I have had to raise my voice, and they know it, and they don't like it. I don't like it, but that's usually like kind of the extreme. But the conversation, I think, with them and is really important. And honestly, like, one of my kids is very visual, so sometimes I'll get on the whiteboard and like try to get them to understand what's happening here
That's a good
as
one.
part of that conversation. Because really, like, we just got to talk things through, I think, at the end of it. And yeah, that's kind of the systems that we have here. It's not perfect, but it's been working for us.
Man, I like that all three of us are Android based, bro.
Right.
Like we our main phones are Android, bro.
Exactly. Hey, you just mentioned the Samsung watch. That's what I got. I don't, and I told my wife, you're paying a premium for less technology. Why would you want to pay a
Yep,
premium for less technology?
yep.
But she's also an iPhone user, an Apple user. Yeah, don't understand it. But uh, what's just based on what we're talking about right now, it seems like we're all okay with our kids using technology. So I'll tell you, my sister-in-law, his brother just had his first kid. He's 7 months. And I know she said no, he's not gonna get any screen time, any screen time until he's, I forgot how old she said, sometimes it makes me feel bad thinking, wait, am I exposing my kids to screen time at a young of an age? And I started thinking, am I doing it right? Am I doing it wrong? So yeah, I think mine, and I'm a little lenient too with my kids where I don't really supervise my oldest. I never really supervise them, although it's very dangerous because I do remember that one time on Roblox, as friends, I found out they were playing with an adult when they were kids, and then I said, nope, you cannot do that. So you can only play with your friends, and he's been abiding by that ever since. But I'm always pretty lenient because I think, well, I used to watch Jerry Springer at midnight when parents were asleep, but I turned out okay. So that always comes to mind. But I like what Ed mentioned. I think that it's technology is important because it's in our lives now. There is, and it's going to continue to be in our lives. So it's good to expose them at an early age because they need to build those skills. Knowing how to type at a young age, knowing how to you even use a tablet so that they can learn how to build some like billable skills at a young age. I think technology is not bad, but that conversation point is very important. My daughter just started using Roblox, and we told her we had that conversation. Everyone you add on Roblox has to be approved by us. There's not one person that you can add without our permission because just recently, I think what was it like a couple months ago, a kid was kidnapped. He was on Roblox. He met up with an adult that he met on Roblox, and then he hasn't been back home. So he's missing, and I think he's local, so something like in Irvine or somewhere around here.
That's
But
wild.
I see it's very dangerous. So just definitely having that conversation, especially when they're getting older and now they're exposed to the web. Just having that conversation with them, I think it's important. It's like what
Wow.
you mentioned, Ed.
That's pretty wild, but like think about, when we were, the internet started becoming a thing. Like we were on AOL, bro, AIM Messenger, like, yo, hang up the
Bro,
phone so I can dial in. And then it was just chaos in there, bro. We would
big
be
time.
doing
Even
all
MySpace.
kinds of stuff, bro. MySpace, like, like it's crazy. And you talk about TV, but forget about that, bro. You stay later, like Girls Gone Wild would be on TV, like,
Woo! I don't
and like
remember that.
even modern, like if you go to Mexico, for example, and you put on the TV, like there's gory stuff on TV, man.
Yeah,
And so like in a lot of ways, like TV is dangerous. And like
yeah.
once you see something, you cannot unsee it. And I think about that with my kids a lot because I saw stuff growing up that like I couldn't unsee, and it just did something. It made me think more, made me want to know more, and like it wasn't always a positive thing. And so that's why I'm super, super all over my kids' technology, because I know it's a gateway to
Yeah.
everything. So like I actually don't let them play online on anything. They're on Minecraft, but like it's just local.
Yeah. On that, Ed, yeah, I remember back then to see like a person getting shot, right? You would have to go to certain pages that like were unknown, or yeah, yeah, or Mexico, right? You had to see some stuff like that. Now you can see videos of like Charlie Kirk getting shot, and you can see the bullet going through and the blood coming out. That used to be hard to find when we were growing up, right? That wasn't like a common thing you would see on the news. Now it's just all over social media. Things go viral like that, and I feel like it desensitizes the kids to think it's normal, and especially if you don't have like certain restrictions for the kids to watch a lot of the stuff that just goes viral and you can't stop it. What I did, and again, my kids are still 4, but I got them emulators. I don't know if you guys heard of emulators for Game Boy. So they look like an actual Game Boy, bro, but you just download thousands of games. I put Pokemon on there for Mario Kart, Crash Bandicoot. They're loving it, bro. Like if we're on a road trip, like more than an hour, that's what they're playing. They're not playing on an iPad. They're playing on these little Game Boy looking things. No online, and if I let them, they can probably be on there for hours if I let them. So I
That's
remember
dope.
growing up, and I remember Game Boy. I would be on Game Boy for hours, like 4 or 5 hours playing whatever, right? I just figured like, okay, instead of putting them on an iPad, I'll get them this Game Boy looking thing. And to me right now, hopefully they stay stuck on it when they're older, but that was right now that's the thing. I'll let them use the iPad for like YouTube if we're at a restaurant while we're waiting for the food, but they know not to once the food comes, iPad's off. Excuse me. But yeah, I think those offline games at a certain age, right? I don't have any kids over 5, but if you are gonna give them screen time, if you can keep an offline type of game, would be cool.
Yeah, and
Cause
I
yeah,
think you both of you guys are totally right about that. Yeah, hearing you both speak, because definitely the web is very, very dangerous. And just right now that we're talking about AOL, I remember on in those chats, and you would talk to just all these random people. And I remember one time there was someone that was asking me, they said, "Oh, hey, let's hang out and just give me your parents' credit card." Luckily, I didn't do it, but the just being online, and it still happens, right, in today's age. But you see that happen pretty often, and then just definitely, I think, maybe taking them off the grid. So when my daughter gets mad that she's gonna be taken off the grid, I'll tell them it was Ed and Leo's fault. I'll blame it on you guys.
Yeah, man, you won't regret it. I mean, honestly, we're like, let's talk about it. Like I don't know about you guys, but sleepovers, that was not a thing, bro. Like that was absolutely not a thing. Sleepovers was not a thing. It wasn't until way later, like high school, when my parents knew the other parents and they would go and they would talk to the parents and whatnot, that we were starting to have sleepovers. But I remember, dude, but I had some American friends and like they were allowed to sleep over all the time everywhere. I was like, bro, and like they would come over because we would be sleeping over, but we would be partying, but we'd be safe. We would be at the house. But like I just know how I was as a kid. You know, I made it, but that was a fine line. It was a fine line, and like I just do. Cannot. I will not forgive myself if one little slip that I could have held back. Like I will not forgive myself. So I'm sorry. Like no sleepovers. No, they want to come sleep here. That person's like cool, but no sleepovers. And as much as my daughter wants a phone one day, and like, cause other people, I'm like, you know what? She asked me for a communication device, and I gave her a walkie-talkie. I bought 4 walkie-talkies. I was like, you can get one, you give one to your friend, your brother has one, I have one. Like we're walkie-talkies. It was cool. We actually use them when we go camping and stuff. Like
yeah,
good, nice walkie-talkies.
10-mile radius.
Yeah, like different antennas, like you can input your own radio frequency. Pretty legit. And so that's what we ended up giving her a watch. A lot of kids on the bus have a watch too. And there is instances where whatever, you want to have that communication. And I'm like, dude, watches like this were not a thing for us. Like we grew up when the cell phone was taking off. And so for you be able to do so much on their watch, but also just restrict by default because it's a watch, smaller processor, smaller display. I'm stoked to ride the watch as long as possible. I think that's gonna be a winner for us, especially with the control that you have these days. But it's dangerous out there, man. And I just I would not be able to forgive myself. So we try to keep it pretty tight. Super Nintendo is big here, though. We got the little Super Nintendo with all the games, kind of like you're talking. And
Yeah.
like, man, once that thing gets turned on and plugged in, it's even me. We're like, I got home from work, yo, wanna play? Let's try to beat some levels. And we sit there trying to beat the levels. But it's like no ads. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You're just playing this game and you pause it and it's fine. Like it's just the way to go. But I'm gonna get on the emulator game, man. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, those are two things that I definitely my daughter's been asking for a phone. Got her a watch instead. Said no phone. You're too young for a phone. Maybe when she's in high school, but for now, I think phones are pretty dangerous. And also no sleepovers. One of her friends, we live in a community where it's like I think 60% plus the Caucasian here. So the friends hang out and like, hey, can Larissa spend the night? I told her that that's a non-negotiable, and she came home sad. Why couldn't I stay the night? Told her you just can't. Well, why? You just can't. Like she's too young to understand why. So that's why I tell I don't want to I don't really give her an explanation, but I tell her that's just a
Hmm.
rule. You cannot sleep over other people's homes. And but yeah, definitely, yeah, those two things for sure are definite no's, and because it's dangerous and just we hear what goes on all the time in the news. I like to, for whatever reason, I'll turn on Crime Watch while
Hmm.
I'm taking a shower and I'm just listening to it, and it's made me very very paranoid
Yeah.
just because, but there's things that are happening in real life. Those are true events.
Yeah, man, it's crazy out there. Like we're a pretty good community of people that we trust with our church and one our neighborhoods. But like still, man, like, you just don't know. And unfortunately, a lot of the bad things happen with people in your close communities. You don't know what happens after dark. Yeah, and so we'll let them hang out pretty late and be like, I don't care. Like right when you guys are about to go to sleep, I'll come get you. It's fine, no problem. And to be honest, and this is what I was telling a friend, it was like, look, when there are other friends of them here, I am on like extra alert, man. I am like walking the perimeter, locking doors on time. I mean, our doors all lock automatically anyway, but like I'm checking cameras, and like I have pretty, I try to keep security pretty high here, and like just make sure everybody's good, everybody's warm, fed. Just I don't know. I'm just a parent, and I was telling my wife, I was like, I don't know if other dudes are like that. Like I have no idea. Like how do I know they don't just go pass out and have no idea what's going on in their house with a bunch of kids? Like I don't know, and I'm not gonna go and check. Like it's just a hard rule for us as well, and I don't think I'm gonna regret this one. I think they'll understand it later, especially when they have their own children. But it's just a crazy
Yeah,
world out there
definitely.
today, and I'm not gonna regret that one.
Yeah, totally. So, in your opinion, do you think that we've become soft just based on our parenting and our parenting styles? Is that we've become too soft? Because I know that there's a lot of talk about how kids nowadays, and I remember hearing it when I was when I started my first company. I remember I was a millennial. I was very young, having meetings with a lot of Gen Xers, and hanging out with them. And I usually always, I've always hung out with older people, but just going out for like a business meeting, having some drinks with some people that we would network with. And they would always talk about the millennials. Millennials are so soft, millennials this, millennials that. And I feel like now we're saying that about the Gen Zers, that the Gen Zers don't have that emotional intelligence or maturity has that been created because we've been too soft? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
So what comes to mind immediately is, my parents as grandparents, and even my wife's parents as grandparents. Bro, we'd be like, excuse me, that would have never been allowed when we were growing up. Like, you're doing what? You're letting them get away with what? And it's like, hold on, they were strict hardline with us. But now as grandparents, like they're completely different. They're way softer. And so I think there's something to say there with society in general. Like over time, we've collected more data, we've done more studies, we've done a lot of research. The results are in. And there are certain things that I have been convinced of myself, like hitting your kids isn't necessary. And like honestly, that wasn't how I came into being a parent. But like today, especially with all the stuff that we've learned with our son on the spectrum, like no, there's other ways to manage behavioral issues. And so that's one thing. The work ethic one is another one because, I have a very strong work ethic. I'm a workaholic, self-diagnosed, and my wife could be said to be the same. And when we look at, our kids' generation, sometimes we feel like they're lazy and like they just got it all handed to them almost. But if you look closely, like there are certain things that these kids will non-stop, they will not sleep because they just want to do that thing, and we've allowed them to have the privilege to focus that energy that we also have into what they desire to love to do. Whereas we had to spread it because we had to survive the area that we grew up in, the neighborhoods that we grew up in. And so we had to spread that energy in multiple different ways. We were not allowed the privilege to just focus it like a laser beam on the one thing. You know what I'm saying? And even us as adults, like the three of us, like we're doing a bunch of stuff. We don't just work a 9 to 5, like and be parents. Like we're doing a whole bunch of other stuff because we came up in that generation and we still feel behind. We still want to achieve. We still want to leave a better generation, not just for our kids, but for our grandchildren, which is for them, like we talked last time, they don't have to worry about a lot of those other stuff, those survival tactics, if you will, on the daily grind. They just got the secure baseline environment and they're able to, focus intensely on the things that they want to focus. Honestly, to the point that sometimes it becomes an obsession and we have to pull them back from it. And that's a different conversation. It's a different adjustment. And so, like, if you ask a boomer, I think for sure they would be like, yeah, they gone soft. But if you bring him into like, okay, show me, watch how this kid, I don't know, my son, for example, makes a stop motion video. The boomer wouldn't even know where to start. There is just so much that goes on into that whole creation thing that they just don't know where to start. And so when I've had my dad and my mom, expose them to like, look at the intense work that my son does with creating different scenes, with moving the thing, erasing sticks that he used to move a character, like the animation and the storytelling and the audio recordings he does to bring him into the video, like they're like, whoa, this is an immense amount of work. And it's like, yeah. And so I think it's just different skill sets, different things that people are doing that are hard to see for others. I think there's a big part of that. I think the work ethic is there. It's just different and it's hard to see when you're not, area. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah, yeah. Then I think you bring up a good point, and that's it's good to look at the data. I think that's what's very important, making sure that the proof is in the pudding, right? Just looking at the data and seeing that type of parenting, like even just being physical with kids, maybe it may not be something that is necessary, and I know it's something that that is done and can be done, and it's maybe effective in some cases, but I guess
I'm
just
sorry, bro.
looking at the data is a little different. Like my wife, she's a therapist, so she reasons with my kids when I tell her there's no need to reason and hear the explanation sometimes. That's wrong. So she does a lot with my teenager. They'll explain, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, why is she having this conversation? Definitely, he did something wrong, but he does that pretty often because she's like research based data. She has to go through her whole motions, like she does when she goes to when she sees her clients in therapy. So I know that, but it's data backed. So her methods, yeah, they may be a little slower. If we want to see instant results, maybe a little slower, but I guess they're effective methods. But something else I thought that you mentioned that was funny is like how our parents are with our kids. Same way. My dad, I see my dad. My
Yeah.
dad, he's old school Mexican. No affection. I don't think he
Uh,
ever. The first time he ever gave me a hug was when I graduated with my master's. And he said, "Oh," but it
wow.
was like one of those like forced, like, "Oh, good job, son." He was proud, but it
Wow.
was like we never really hugged or no like real emotional affection. I know my dad cares. I think the one of the most caring people. He just shows it differently, just because of how he was
Yeah.
raised. But just seeing how he is with my kids, like hugging them, kissing them, like who is this guy? Yeah,
Yeah.
I've never even seen him. I rarely saw him smile when I was a kid, but now he's over here. He's like a completely different person. Goes and when they're about to go over, goes and buys them candy and things that just so that they can be happy or gets them some just gets their favorite thing, buys them toys. I'm wondering, like, this person never showed it like just one 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 emotion my whole childhood, and now he's super affectionate, which I love. Absolutely love seeing that. But it's crazy how they probably think, and we learn through our experiences too. So they probably thought, okay, maybe I shouldn't have done that stuff on them, and now they're trying to correct things with our kids. I think it's nice. But it's funny seeing how they were with us, and now seeing them with our kids. I don't know if this is the thing with Julia with your mom.
Yeah, for sure, man. I think so. The way my mom grew up, I feel like our relationship with my mom and is the best. Where when there's a struggle, when we're scrambling for something, that's when we come together and we figure things out, right? And I feel like that's because that's how we grew up. Like we came together and we figured things out, her and I, because most of my life and most of her life now, because she's at that age, was how can we help each other, right? From my young age to when we came over here. So when things are good, I feel like that's when we bicker the most. Like when there's no problems are going on, that's when her and I are always like um going against the grain of each other's views on kids. I think a lot of it has to do with what you were saying. I think because she did it by herself, a lot of the times she feels she won't say it, right? Because the pride in those boomers is ridiculous. They won't. Most of them won't admit that they did anything wrong growing up. They all they would say is, "I did my best," and that's it. Instead of like, "Okay, yeah, my best might have not been the best," you know. But they won't ever say that. So I noticed the same as you, Jose, where she does things that I was like, man, you would have smacked the crap out of me had I done that at that age, you know, even if I was 4. So when I see my mom treat my kids a certain way, or yeah, like I used to ask for Happy Meals. Like, you know, I used to be like, hey man, mom, I want to. We don't let my wife is like a big nutritionist, so she won't let them have fast food, but she brings them food all the time. I'm like, man, we used to tell me there was food at home all the time, you know. Like me stopping at even a
Yeah.
Pollo Loco wasn't even a thing. So she'll bring him food. She'll call my wife or call me like, "Hey, I'm stopping at, you know, this place. Do you want me to bring the kids anything?" And you can tell the difference. Toys. Oh my God, Christmas, bro. So like I'm big on lowering consumption. I don't want my kids to get used
Mm.
to a lot of consuming. I don't want them thinking that Easter is a consumption holiday. I don't want them to think that Christmas is a consumption holiday because I feel like especially here in this country that's a norm, right? Every
Yeah.
holiday is a consumption holiday. I try to be very strict. And the only one that listens is my mom, right? But one gift per person for each of my kids, right? And but she just goes all out. Like she's like, oh, she gets them like those little keyboard piano things and gets them like a big old Moana doll. I'm like, man, you can't go doing that. But then the other side, my wife's side, I'll say it and I'll be blunt about it, about like, hey, we try not to do too many toys. No F's given, man. We show up. Christmas trees
Yeah,
full,
dude.
you know? And it sucks because at the same time I want to be a-hole and be like, man, you know what? Kids open 3 and then the rest we're gonna put them away. But you know, I gotta pick and choose my battles, not because really of what they think, but I don't want to like disrespect my wife in that sense, right? Like I know my wife, she grew up that way. You know, there was a story where it was a Christmas and they had Christmas gifts all the way until January lined up in the hallway because they hadn't got to them yet, right? And I was like, bro, that's insane. I don't care how much money I have. That's too much, right? Like you're feeding the wrong thing to a kid. In my perspective, obviously, I mean, I don't think my wife has a spending problem or anything that I feel like would have been a cause and effect of that situation. But just thinking of doing that to my kids is wild. So I try to limit gifts. But going back to like, yeah, my mom would never, right? we were growing up. So now my mom, she tries to go above and beyond now for my kids, which is her grandkids, and it makes sense. I mean, I guess I'm the only child, so those are her only grandkids that she has.
Yeah, something that works for that is send them pictures of the toys in the trash. I tell my
Yeah,
brother, my in-laws, hey, it's gonna end up in the trash can.
Yeah.
Here's a picture. Look, you just gave it to them last month, but because otherwise it creates a mess.
Yeah.
I fractured my ankle because my kids they would just give them toys all the time. Stepped on the toy and ended up fracturing my ankle because of that.
Well,
So
one of the
yeah,
things we do when we have too many gifts is like we'll open them, we'll thank them, we'll unwrap them, but then we'll be like, all right, we're gonna play with these right now, and we'll unbox those, and the rest we'll put them in the closet. And so we'll just hold those for like another time, bro. Like whatever. That might be their birthday. It might be just random.
I
But it'd
do
be
that
like,
now.
oh, hey, we got this that your aunt gave you, whatever. We never unwrapped it, and like here it is. Like we just try to postpone that too because it is a problem. And I was just having dinner with some friends today, and after being in Panama for 3 weeks, I'm like, this life that we live here in the U.S., you guys, is unreal. Like
Unreal,
it
man.
is unreal. Like the abundance here is just out of control. Like everything, bro. What do you want? 10 of them, 100 of them. Like everybody, you can go anywhere and get whatever you want all the time, anytime, as many as you
Yeah,
want. Like it is out of control. And so, like again, same. Like I don't want. It's hard because we live here, and this is a consumer economy. But there is something to that. And like I have had many conversations with my mom about the gift situation. Like even to me, like mom, I don't need anything. Like thank you. Save it, put it in the 529 plan. But I don't know. What are you gonna do?
yeah, and that is I actually wish I knew what to do because my first instinct is be a jerk, right? And that's obviously not the way to go. But like, how do you get people to respect what you want for your family? And I think that's the hard part because because they feel like, well, you're my family too, and yes, we are your family. But we're also an extended side of the family, right? Like my family is my nucleus. So I want to make sure that it's raised a certain way, and we hope that everybody that has your back follows suit. But a lot of times they're so stuck in their ways, right? Especially boomers, where they're like, well, no, it works. My kids just turn out just fine, so they're gonna turn out just fine. So let me just give them everything that I can and want. So it is a hard approach sometimes. I feel like to what is the right approach?
and it's funny because we're categorizing people, I guess, based on the years that they're born in, and some people say, well, you're generalizing, but the only thing is, and if you really look at just how the time that you grow up in does have an impact on you because of the experiences that you went through. So, for example, like millennials, what we went through, we've gone through a pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
we've gone through a great recession. Those experiences have impacted us in the way we think. The boomers, they went through different wars, different times, so that also influenced the way that they raised their kids, and the struggles that they saw. So I know we're kind of like generalizing, but there's data out there right now. I'm writing a paper on that where different leaders, for publicly traded companies, the different leaders run their companies different, whether it's a Gen X, a boomer, millennial, and they told you there's like data that backs that up, and it's because of the experiences that we're living through right now. The data that we have, everything is very open now. So I think that those experiences do influence us, even though it seems like we're generalizing. In reality, it's just we're being influenced by what's going on during our times.
Yeah, but also feel like the patterns are similar, right? We generalize it, but there's truth to it. You know what I'm saying? Like there is a point of view that it's common and it's constant. And it's a pattern between my mom and my wife's parents and my uncles and my aunts, and the way they see things and the way they acknowledge things is very similar. Not all of them are the same, but there is a constant in there for sure.
Yeah, and there's a reason why when we like even when you watch those reels of like the chanclas, the mom with the chancla, I'm like, okay, you laugh about it because it reminds you of your parents and
Yeah.
those sort of things, the way they taught, they reacted, or the way they showed they educated you or tutored you, like, hey, do your homework. Okay, I need some help. Well, do your homework. Like you're supposed to, it's that's how we were forced to learn. But it's very common, like you said. There's patterns there, definitely. Yeah. So yeah, just thinking about everything. It's yes, different generations parent differently, and well, I like to say that millennials are the best parents, but who knows, right?
We'll
I
see.
know
But
we're definitely more involved, which is nice to see.
yeah,
Like,
let me ask you
definitely
this:
more
so
involved.
if you could bring back like one parenting trait from the older generation, maybe grandparent or parent, maybe Gen X or even before that, like what would it be?
Now, are you asking in a selfish way, like what was cool about the men back then, or are you asking like what's gonna
Well,
better our family?
no, I'm like, if there's something that was very common or normal or that you experienced back then that maybe you're not doing so much now and maybe not is not as common that you feel like is worthwhile and bringing back, like what would that be?
So I have I'm gonna jump on this one. I just feel like I have a mixed feelings on the "I told you so" mentality, right? A lot of times I feel like I shouldn't, especially when it's like when we're out and about and I have four kids, all under four, and three of them are running around, and I'm trying to tell them, don't do X, Y, Z because one, you can get lost or you can fall or whatever. I don't feel like I should. Sometimes I don't have the time to explain to you before I tell you you shouldn't do this, why you shouldn't do this because all these consequences can happen. Like in the moment, I need you just to listen to me. So, but because they're not used to me just telling them to do something, and because I told you so, because we're the millennial parent that tries to explain everything beforehand, before we do the chancla or the or whatever we're doing. I feel like that's one of the things that in certain situations I would love to bring back as a common thing, right? If I tell you something, just do it in the meantime and don't ask questions until maybe later. And I think that right now with my kids being 4 and under, it's something that I'm like, man, I wish I had just showed them to just listen to me without explanation.
I agree on that one for sure. And I have to just sometimes reason with a 3-year-old or 2-year-old. I'm thinking, okay, I'm explaining like why do I need to do this or why, just I think that's definitely a good one. Just growing up with my grandpa, as soon as I was 10, when I was 10 years old, I was already like, I don't know. I think in sixth grade, I was already like 220 pounds. By 220 pounds, 5'6". I only grew 2 more inches, 3 more inches after sixth grade. But my grandpa, you're already, look, you're huge. You got to get to work. Go and go ask the neighbors, see if they need their yard done. I actually like that. I like that, the fact, because I feel like it forced me, and I did. I started, I would go and paint the neighbors'
Hmm.
fences and do little things like that. And it made me realize, I don't want to do manual labor for the rest of my life. And it's ironic because my son, he went and got a job. I didn't want him to get a job. He went and got a job on his own. Today was his first, like, Saturday, a busy day at work. And he said, he got home and said, I don't think I can do this for more than a year. And I thought, thank goodness. He realized that on his own, and he said, I think I'm gonna go just pick up a skill like video editing and just start seeing. And I love hearing that because he learned that on his own. I think I learned that back then too. I didn't want to do manual labor as a career. That's what I did for when I was young. I would go and hustle, pick up
Hmm.
metal, pick up cans, what are those called, the little freight things. Go pick that up. So I would see my grandpa do that. He had pallets. So I would go do that but didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. So it made me learn early on because he pushed me too. He said, go get a job. And I thought, he's right. I'm big enough. I'm bigger than him. I'm big enough to go and do some manual labor. And I did, and quickly found out it wasn't for me.
Yeah, mine was gonna be along along those lines because I remember going to work with my dad, man, and like he'd take me in the truck, and I had this vivid memory of going to on this one truck trip, and we went to a farm, watermelon farm, and I love bro, I love watermelon. And so he went and took me to the watermelon farm, and he's just showing me like the whole process of like growing and picking watermelon. And bro, it was backbreaking work, man. And he talked to the foreman or whatever, I don't know what his title was, and he was like, "You can have whatever watermelon you want, but you got to go and grab it." And like I grabbed a bunch of watermelons and I ate watermelons for days and it was awesome. But like I remember like I don't want to be picking watermelons for a living. And then I also went I think it was at the same time, another load was these tiny little bottles that were really thick. And he would always open the trailer to show me what it was. Like, it's a trucker thing. Like, what load? What's your load? Like, what are you hauling? And then whenever we would go and drop off a load, he would always ask if he can bring his son inside. And sometimes he couldn't, but this time he could. And as it was the first time I saw them taking these little tiny bottles, and it was a plant that did blow molding. And so they would blow them into 2 liter bottles and then
Mm.
later on get filled with whatever, Coke or Sprite or whatever. And I was like, whoa, like this little tiny bottle gets blow molded. And he didn't really understand how it worked, but like I remember seeing the machine and I remember it was hot and it was loud and it was like an industrial or manufacturing environment. And so like many different similar experiences I had, many different agriculture products, some refrigerated food products, other manufactured goods. And what I'm saying here is like just going to work with my dad was some of the most memorable things that I have with him. And when you're on the truck, like you gotta adjust the brakes. I'd be out there adjusting brakes. You gotta move the legs of the trailer up and down. Like boom, I've been doing that. If you got a 57 footer, bro, those things are really long. Like I was this guy to help him out. I'd open the trailer doors. I would put the load locks on. Like I would check the oil, the coolant. I would go in there and wash the windows. Like I knew how to do everything on a truck, bro, when I was like 13, 14. And as soon as I could drive the pedals, like he would show me how to drive and low gear, high gear, like the whole thing. The book when you got to go to sleep, like you might because you log it. Like if you ever go in an old Peterbilt truck, I also know a lot about the trucks and all the different brands because he would have a different in different companies. Like all the gauges, what the gauges meant, what the red and the yellow air hoses were for, like the brake, the Jake brake, how you use that, like just so much stuff that I learned just being on the job with my dad.
Yeah.
And like no one could ever take that away from me. If I needed to be a truck driver today, bro, I would crush it, man. No problem. You know what I mean? But I also saw how hard it was and made me want to do more, want to do better, want to do something different. And like, I don't know how many companies still let you bring your kid to work and how many of those days are soft. Like, oh, we're going to bring you in the conference room and we're going to have snacks. Like, no, dude, like take them to the line and put them to turn some screws and
Yeah.
show them how to do the thing.
So I'm gonna
And
add to
so
that.
like, I wish that is something that was more like just
Normal.
predominant like in the country.
That'd be
When
awesome. Yeah.
when I was 15 years old, I didn't have my work permit yet. 'Cause I know I was supposed to get at 15 and a half. My uncle, it was summer. He was like, "Hey, you want to come work with me?" And he did construction, and he would just haul. He was a trucker too, but he would just haul all the broken down cement from demolition away. Because you want to come, you can make $10 an hour. I think minimum wage was like $6 at the time. I was like, oh heck yeah, man, I'm gonna make killing right now. But man, we were the pickers, so we would have picks. We would have to break the cement down from demolished homes. So the foundation, we had to break it down with picks because they couldn't get in. Sometimes they couldn't get in the bulldozer or whatever the pick the machine that would break it down. So we would have to break
Jackhammer.
down. Yeah, the jackhammer. There you go. And we would have to go in there with a pick, bro. And I remember the first 2 days, my blisters would bleed. And I was thinking, no, this isn't worth, this is $200 a day isn't worth it, man. And I think I worked the whole summer. It was 6 weeks. And I came back and I was like, man, I think that's when I bought my first Honda. If you guys remember my first Honda.
I do.
But that I remember thinking like, dude, this is not worth it. That's when I was like, I'm gonna lock in and have it. I'm going to college
Yeah.
because I'm not gonna bleed my hands for a living, for sure. Yeah, and
Dude, that's
and you're right, bro.
facts.
I don't think they do that anymore. For younger kids, right? For under 18, I feel like the labor laws got so strict and people complain so much.
That's what I mean, man.
Imagine if my mom would have saw my hands bleeding if she was a Karen, that company would have been sued right off the bat.
That's what I mean, man. Like, oh no, they're chemicals or
Yeah,
whatever. It's like, bro, what are you talking about? Like, you can go there for a couple of hours, like, just get out there and grind and learn what it is to grind. Like,
yeah,
I have fond memories working in warehouses in Ontario, California, like barely able to get a work permit. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And like, I'm unloading and loading semis with no AC, no heater. You know all
Whew.
this complaining about Amazon warehouses don't have AC, like, yeah, you don't want to work there. Like, you work there because you didn't go get another job. Like, you didn't get a career. Okay, like robots are going to replace those jobs in a number of years, you guys, and they're not. Those warehouses are not going to have AC again.
Yeah.
But like, I was loading and unloading trucks. I remember, dude, we'd all take our shirts off. We'd be sweating bullets. But like, yeah, I don't want to do that. And like, I think that a lot of these jobs, like, they taught me that. I did a lot of construction too, and like, landscaping, bro. I did not
Ooh.
want to do landscaping, man. I did
Yeah.
not. I just wish that was. And for me, like through the church, like we go and do mission trips, and I see that. Like we're going to somewhere and doing, we're going to Mexico. We sponsor a church down there, and we're building stuff. Like we're helping them paint, we're helping them do stuff. And it's hot, it's humid, and and like yes, I love that. Like we have to understand, we have to almost, it's that pain, right? We got to feel a little bit of that pain, and if
Exactly.
you don't want it and you don't want to do that for the rest of your life, then do better, then do something else so you don't have to. Like that was always a driving factor to me. Like I talked earlier, like I didn't want to have a kid early, check that, but then I didn't want to work at a warehouse, man, my whole
Yeah.
life. Like I did not want to do that. And so here I am now working at, actually it's a joke because I worked on Amazon Go, which is a grocery store, just walk out grocery store. And so my mom, I was over there. My mom, you didn't want me to work at a warehouse. You didn't want me to work at a restaurant or a grocery store. And like I worked at Amazon Go, which is a just walk out grocery store kind of warehouse. But anyway, it's a joke. It turned out fine. But I just wish younger kids could have that level of exposure. And right now it's up to the parents. But when you're a parent, you're like, go do some chores around the house. It's just not the same as
It's
like
not.
you're with someone else and like you gotta clock in and clock out. And did you bring a
Yeah.
lunch? Because if you didn't bring a lunch, like you ain't gonna eat it.
And dealing with different personalities too, man. Like, especially when I was younger, even when I worked for Stater Brothers, like the personas of people, the way they yell at you and belittled you, like built that tough skin of like, you know what, F this guy. I'm just gonna do my work because I know what it takes to do my work. But you're able to deal with those personalities, and I feel like that's something that, especially this new generation coming up. Oh my God, bro, they get so offended for little things or insulted, and it's like, dude, some people just gotta know how to talk or ignore, right? You know what you gotta do. You know what you're hired for. Just get it done.
Yeah, you're definitely seeing it's something that should come back for sure. I think so. But I'll tell you, Ed, the chores that I have my son do are pretty tough. They're similar to going out and working on a construction site. It's 100 degrees. I tell, hey son, you know what? People, your grandpa works in 100-degree weather. Go out there. You're not better than him. Go out there and get pick the weeds or pick up the dog food. It's just I guess
Yeah.
it's still trying to replicate that a little bit there.
I like it, man. I like it.
Awesome.
What do you guys think?
There's one last question on here.
Let me see.
When your kids are adults and someone asks them what kind of father you were, what do you hope they say about you? It's a
Yeah.
deep one, bro.
You know what? I'm gonna start with that one because that's one of the main reasons that I even brought this idea to Jose. Like I want them to know that we definitely brainstormed on how to be great fathers, right? And I feel like this is gonna be like a journal type thing that later on when we grow up, they can see that, dude, we tried to look for resources and gather as much data and knowledge as we can, and not only just learn it, but apply it to be the best fathers we could be, right? This is, I'm sure a lot of people before us tried and did their best, but we actually are able to have proof of it. And that's why, like, I think this podcast is something that when my kids grow up, they're going to be able to look at it and say, man, dad, I mean, you may have done some mistake and that mistake, but you really did look for resources, and you didn't look for resources within your community. You look for resources with people that you've networked, people that have done certain things, people that became engineers and professors, and they did all this stuff. I feel like I want them to know that we tried. We tried our
Yeah.
best no matter what.
For me, I would say like I just really want to be present. And I think that is partly from the lack of my dad. And it's not by choice, I guess. It just that was his profession. That's what he knew how to do and how to do well. And so yeah, and he did it. And like I said, dude, my dad would tell you anywhere to go in the continental United States without a map, like homeboy will not get lost. It's quite impressive. And so he's good at it. But the presence is really important. I'm trying to be. I'm also a workaholic. Sometimes I got to travel a lot for work, and I sometimes do work long hours. My problem is I actually really enjoy what I'm doing, but like being able to go on this trip with my son, like man, that was awesome. Like I didn't have many trips like this growing up, and the ones that I did, like there was no way my dad was gonna be able to go on these field trips. You know what I mean? I do remember my mom going on a field trip with me in preschool. So you can see how important that is. That was the day I met Barney, bro. It was a big deal. So very memorable. But like I'm very sure my son's gonna remember this trip that I was there for. And so I just want to try to be present. And so even though like I work a lot, I try to make those memories with them at a young age. Because like you're saying, like there's gonna be proof. Not only are these memories, core memories, but bro, we got so many photos nowadays and everything's backed up and mega
Yeah.
backed up that like we're gonna have that. And something that we do with our son is we have a black book. Like we bought a black book, like, we used to have to like do graffiti and stuff. And every year we have his teachers or aides or anybody who was impactful write something into that black book. And usually my wife and I will make like a summary of like the year in there. So our goal is for when he graduates high school, we want to gift him this black book for him to see, look back, like all the stuff that kind of we did for him in his case, because him being on the spectrum and us navigating that. But aside from that, the photos, the events, like I just want them to be the present, and my ultimate goal in life is to be a grandfather. Like it's kind of weird, but we have two tortoises, and my goal for those tortoises, the reason why I have them, is I want my grandchildren to ride dinosaurs. Like that is why I have tortoises. And like I don't know if my kids are gonna have kids, right? Like I can't control that, but I want to be able to be a grandfather for. I also, grew up with my great grandfather for the first 2 years of my life, but then essentially never had a grandparent again because we were in the States. I never had my grandparents in my life. Like I met them a couple of times, like literally. And so I just those gaps that I have in my life, I want to fill for
Yeah.
my offspring, if you will. So presence, that's gonna be my answer. What about you, Jose?
Yeah, and presence definitely is. I think it's something that's big. Both my parents worked. They were a little less traditional. My dad worked, my mom worked. So I never really spent too much time with them during the week, and even on the weekends. My mom, she had her beauty salon since I was a little kid. So she would work on Saturdays. So I think presence for me is very big. That's why I do try to be as present as possible with my kids. If I have an hour, I'll take them out for a bike ride, take them to the park, any time that I have available. And even when I don't have time available, I'll make time for them. I don't mind working till 2, 3 in the morning as long as it meant that I was able to spend a few quality hours with them. So presence is big, but I think the second thing that I do want them to remember is that I was a good partner to their mom. I think
Mm,
that's pretty big for me, especially
Yeah,
having
that's
little
huge.
girls. Yeah,
yeah.
having little girls, I want them to see how what a good partner looks like and what
Hmm.
a loving partner looks like. I think for many years I got married. Yeah, I don't think I was that. I was a very good partner for the first, honestly, 10 years of our marriage. I was. I'm surprised my wife stayed with me. Bless her heart. I have no idea how she put up with everything I put her through, but luckily she did because after I think my daughter was born, that I think that's what I realized. You know what? I need to show my daughter what a good partner looks like. So I think that's what I want her to remember. Just when she grows up. But yeah, I think those are the two things: presence and then just being a good partner to their mom.
Yeah,
Now, I
that's a
will tell
good
you,
one.
Ed, for my kids, I told them that in the will is going to say that they have to have, otherwise they're off the will. Yeah,
That's a
I
good
just
one.
seriously had that
Well,
I'm
I
gonna
conversation with
note
mean,
them.
that one.
if we have four or more, there's a good chance one of them's gonna have a kid, right? Like
I hope
we're gonna
so.
be grandparents. Hopefully, our odds are good, right?
Yeah, yeah. Probability is
Yeah,
there,
but being
man.
a good partner, I think, especially because we do
That's
have
huge.
daughters, that's a good one, bro. Because I tell my daughters even now, because sometimes they try to they try to tell me that I said something to my wife so they can get something that they shouldn't have, I'll tell them, hey, look, I loved your mother before I met y'all, and I'm gonna love her after y'all leave. So just understand that she comes first. I always tell them that now that they're 4, you know. And yeah, that's something that I want to definitely implement. That's a good one. It's definitely a good one.
Awesome, guys. Yeah, so it was nice catching up again.
This
Always
was
nice
good,
catching
man.
up.
I love this
Yeah,
session.
heck yeah.
This was fun.
Thanks,
Um,
guys.
all right, we'll talk to you guys. Have fun. Have a good
Peace.
Saturday. Be safe.
Have a good night, guys. Take
All right,
care.
we'll see ya.
Bye.
Peace.